He was a director of Shul 15, which was a Sholem Aleichem folk shul in Brooklyn. I don't know much about what the Farvalters did, so I don't know if he was the equivalent of a principal and set policy and hired teachers, or whether he was one of a committee of people who did those things. But really, people talked about it as if it was his school. In newspaper articles about him that I've read, in the way my mother talks about it, that was his school. And then in the larger world of Yiddish education, he was the president of the Sholem Aleichem Folk Institute. I think he was also served as some other officer with them at some point. He was editor of Kinderjournal for a brief period of time, long-standing contributor and long-standing assistant editor, but then he was chief editor for a period of time also of the Kinderjournal. And that was really an important piece of the Jewish education. That was the sort of highlights for children, but that went along with the curriculum of and the pedagogical aims of that set of schools. Of course, he was also a children's author, but he wrote a pamphlet called The Fate of Our Yiddishist Schools, and he describes the battle over how much religious content would be included in the Jewish schools. He describes at length in that pamphlet, and he was the champion of having first Chumash, Tanakh, so the 5 books of Moses, and then the prophets also, and the writings taught in school to the children, even though it was a secular school. And there were people who were very against this, who said, no, we are secular schools, we're not a religious school, we do Yiddish language and Yiddish literature, but not religion. And he said, how can you understand Yiddish language and Yiddish literature without our source texts? This is where our literature comes out of. This is what Jewish culture and Jewish history come out of. And you can't really understand our history, our culture, without understanding the Torah. He won that battle. And he wrote Chumash for Kinder, which was an abbreviated Chumash for children, and it was incorporated into the curriculum of those schools. So he was not just a teacher, but he was more like a principal, a policy guy, a director. He was on that level. He apparently also taught Torah to the Teachers Institute. So at the highest level, to preparing the people who would teach in the Yiddish schools. So that was him as an educator, and then he wrote about education also, and he was a children's author, of course, but he also wrote about being a children's author. So that he was at a higher scholarly level than some of the other folks who were doing that same work of trying to transmit the culture. He was really a creator of culture, an arguer over culture. Of course, there were many others like that as well, but within that world of Yiddish education, he was very respected as a leader, although always controversial.